And yeah, something like the DK or the Mars would just really give them. Okay, I was gonna say something stable, kind of an anchor to work around, but instead they're going to go for something maybe a little bit more dynamic, a little aggressive with the Pango pick. You see though the immediate ban onto the Bloodseeker once you take the Pango. That has not always been a concern with teams picking the Pangolier, probably due in large part to the fact that the Pangos have been getting picked up maybe a little bit further along in the draft, so you don't have to worry about it as much, but the Bloodseeker is still kind of that tried and true counter to the Pango pick, so Hokori will take it away.
And you get Pango versus CK. I'm happy. We get to see the Pango finally. I was gunning for the Pango for so long there, but at least we get to see it valued a little bit more here. The Sand King was also available, and I think Sand King is a hero that Hokori have run before, but it's also where I think Vitali, he's gotten on top. He's had incredible farm. Still playing a Sand King, still die really quickly. Haven't seen, I think, the cleanest game from him, even though he's certainly been running it in this tournament when that hero's certainly fallen off for a few of the other teams that have tried to play it. I think just a small number tweak with his talent, with Sandstorm specifically, makes him maybe a little bit less potent, but that's where the Pango is none of those things. And we do have that flexibility as well. Think as a core, but when I say core, I do mean as a mid laner, finding a little bit more success. Haven't really seen that Pango shifted to the off lane or the 4 position as we've seen teams rely on in the past. But as a core, the Pango is still very, very scary. I think that's where Osmium should probably look for a counter pick later on here, but I think that's also where Hikori baiting out as much for it. They kind of have to because this Pango can certainly have a bad lane.
Yeah, they took out the Bloodseeker already. Wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe look towards something like the Bane, the Grimstroke, somewhere in that range, especially considering the Ogre uh, could just kind of move. You could shift him over, or you could play one of those aforementioned heroes at the 4 as well and still kind of get away with it. So, see if Hikori do want to put that emphasis on those bans. If they don't, that might sort of give us a hint that they're looking at this Pangolier maybe outside of the mid role, but too early to call at this point. But rather than ban away one of those supports, they will take out the Medusa. So, well, honestly, at this point, ET, I feel like you can never really go wrong with the Medusa ban in the current meta.
Yeah, and put some respect on Kataro's name, right? Gotta fear him, I think, specifically. But also, we've seen what happens when the Pango versus Medusa matchup actually takes place, where you're kind of each other's enemy. You always have to be scared of the Stone Gaze, but at the same time, every time you Rolling Thunder on top of a Medusa, you pretty much get the Stone Gaze out of fear of just getting chain stunned up. So it's an interesting matchup to play versus, but one where I think perhaps Analog just doesn't want to deal with it to begin with. And I kind of agree that hero is just maybe a little bit too safe, a little bit too stable. And that's also where last night, I mean, Parker just kind of carried a game. There wasn't really a shot for the opposing team. And I think Katara could pull that same performance if given the space. So don't even let that be a thought in your mind.
Let's take it away. Don't have to worry about it. Kataro still has other options, but as long as one of them isn't the Medusa, you're going to be feeling a little safer. So take it away. Osmium respond with the removal of the Death Prophet, and now we'll see if they give us any sort of hint here with regards to the Chaos Knight's position. Well, not really. The IO pickup for them instead, so don't really have the Storm Spirit to pair it up with at this point, but there are still some solid options for Osmium. They could, excuse me, very simply could just run it with the CK, or could be looking for another carry further down the line.
Yeah, and it does feel like that CK is going to go into the hands of the carry player. I feel like that must be a Guitar CK just because you're not really making plays all too much on the Osmium side. With IO Ogre, your support duo is fairly passive. It's where you almost wish that Ogre could metamorphize into a Bane or something, where you have some setup in the side lanes. You're actually able to get something going for you because as it stands right now, we have that kind of game plan that we've seen fail quite consistently in Pro Series, where if you have to run at your opponents and you can relocate your opponents at the very least, game gets a little bit scary. Game gets a little bit ugly. It's where I think for Osmium, Would love if perhaps they pick up the Leshrac right now, just so that way they have that playmaker in your mid lane who not just can make plays, but can also get onto these objectives early. It's where the CK really struggles at getting those objectives taken out. But that's also where if they do pick the Lesh, it's into Bugna, it's into Tusk. It's where if you are out in front and you get hit by these team fight spells, you could die quite easily. But I feel like they need a chaos creator. They need someone to start these engagements. And if they're going to run at their opponents, might as well just pick up a hero that's going to do it exceptionally well. Because as of right now, I'm a little bit worried with how they're going to respond with a lot of these plays. Beastmaster, though, okay, that brings it back a little bit for me there. That's your map control. That's your hero pushing into the lane. And Wraith King does not play well versus the creeps. Pango still does, but at least in the carry matchup, that is going to be a little bit of a struggle now that you're going to have to see Yuma deal with.
Yeah, probably one of the better picks that they could have gone for there in terms of the Beastmaster. You maybe sacrifice a little in terms of just straight up frontline strength compared to something like the DK or the Mars, but you have a little bit more lockdown. And at this point, you start kind of looking at what this is going to actually look like for Osmium. If this is the CK1, which it kind of has to be at this point, it'll have an IO. Following behind it with the overcharge, you're going to have the ogre with the bloodlust. You're going to have the Beastmaster perhaps with the passive for the attack speed as well. So you have a CK here who's going to be very much empowered against that Hokori lineup. It'll then come down to how well Hokori can just sort of keep the Chaos Knight contained with their own lock.
Yeah, and of course, we saw this matchup play out before. The CK gets ahead of that Wraith King, and the CK kind of naturally does. On even footing, it does not feel very even. Love the Leshrac ban coming out from Hokori. Think that would have been maybe a little bit too much for Osmium to work with. And that is where, unfortunately for Osmium, they do have to solve the issue that they do bring up with the lineup with the IO, where the IO does not want to stay attached to the CK for all stages of the game. Your Chaos Knight wants level 12. Your Beastmaster wants to play really by himself. You want to be relocating a hero to the Beastmaster. Which hero do they now pick up for their mid lane that allows that IO to have that more free rotation? Because without it, as we usually see with the IO picked up in the second phase here, the lineup can feel awkward. It can feel stilted at times. You can feel like you're falling behind your opponents a little bit here, where Hokori are kind of the opposite of that. They're looking to make pickoffs. They're looking to make plays. They're not really bound by their level 6s here. Maybe you could say so for the Pugna a little bit more, but you're going to be able to make those early trades a little bit easier, and that's where you would hope Team Osmium don't start falling behind, at least level-wise, because Hokori are going to be looking to make plays. They're going to be looking to capitalize off of their Pango's early timings. I just hope they don't get kind of caught in that awkward scenario.
Time Hokori, one last ban here, took out the Lesh, as you sort of pointed out earlier. But, well, what other hero in that middle lane would they really be concerned with, both as matchup against the Pango and a partner for the IO? It's going to be the Queen of Pain that they ban away. That's probably not a hero that bears much consideration for the IO matchup, but still high mobility, high damage coming out from the middle lane, something that Hokori just don't want to do.
Yeah, and well, I'm thinking right now for Team Osmium, of course, they have last overall pick, so they will be able to make sure that Hokori aren't going to get anything kind of underneath them. I think Osmium are doing a really good job banning out offlaners because, well, Vitali's looking for his hero right now, unless he does end up being that Pango, but already brought up that's not really the ideal situation for you. Maybe a Viper ban would be warranted, to be honest, because Viper Tusk is painful, and we also saw the Viper versus CK yesterday. I feel like that's kind of the no-brainer for Osmium. Uh, at the same time, though, maybe we see Puck come out for Osmium in the middle lane. Just anyone that can start a fight, even though it's a little bit damage limited. As we've seen, mid laners that get past the cores, that can get on top of the Pugna, are crucial versus Pugna lineups, where if that life drain is a little bit too successful, the game kind of starts and stops there. At the same time, Brewmaster. Okay, I could kind of pick that up. Very obnoxious hero, deals with the CK illusions very well. I don't want to say a very niche ban because looking over again at that Chinese region, very popular hero. That's where we usually see him slot into that first phase. But I could definitely see why it's banned out here. And what did Hokori go for? The Tide. That certainly feels like a Vitali hero. Not as cool as the Viper could have maybe been, but that's where Viper versus heroes like the Io and the Beastmaster would struggle maybe a little bit more here. That Tide's always got to get his Ravage off.
And of course, anytime you pick up a Tide, then you start sort of talking about that sort of big cooldown on the Ravage. But you got a Pangolier, you have a Tusk, you have a Wraith King who I will assume is going to be picking up a Blink Dagger at some point in his item build. So Hokori are in a situation where they have the sort of tools and personnel to continue fighting even when the Ravage isn't available. So that concern is not as much of a concern for them in this game.
Yep. Feels like that should be a pretty happy situation for them. Not to mention, get an Axe on the tide. Well, then that Ravage is not going to feel nearly as detrimental to you because you do have a really strong team fight spell to throw out there regardless. And the Axe is really good this game. That really slows up both the Seek and the Beastmaster at getting in and out of those fights. Not to mention, if you can get any anti-armor versus the Io and the Wraith King's getting a Deso, it's going to feel great. But we
Okay.
get to see the SA Invoker. That's going to be the final choice here. And that is a pretty nice lane for Sebas versus Analog. But at the same time, that's not that same threat that I think Osmium were looking for in their mid laner. It's one of those performance based heroes where you can really be hit or miss on the Invoker. We've seen so many Invokers come out, especially when it gets picked up early on. It's just simply not as effective as I want to say the Spirits have been before. It's where that consistency really comes into play here. He's got a really nice BKB timing versus Vitali, where your offlaner is not really going to do so much on the Hokori side, but what he can do in the meantime is going to mean everything to this Invoker.
I suppose if you're looking at it on paper, right? Got an Invoker against Wraith King, against Tidehunter, heroes with sort of low mana pools and relatively expensive spells. So if you can get a Tornado EMP combo, you take a lot of that initial threat away. So you do have that to work with. It gives you a little bit more in the way of just lockdown in general. So I don't know. We'll see how well it plays out. I'm just kind of excited to see the Invoker because it's been banned out more than a couple of times in this event, but very rarely have we actually gotten to see anyone play it.
Yeah, and I think it deserves the bans, especially with how popular Medusa is. I think that's really the dead ringer there. Whenever Medusa gets picked up, take out the Invoker. It's too free. It's too easy. But uh, that is a hero that is going to set up for that IO for that Beastmaster. Unfortunately, though, that's another really level hungry hero. So I think this IO is again, gonna be a little bit of a liability, especially if the lanes don't go the way that they really want them to. We've just seen so many IOs, I think, especially in the past 2 days, that kind of get into a game where they don't have anybody to play with. They start falling behind. They don't get that early Holy Lock at that early mech, and then it kind of feels like, what are we doing with this hero?
Yeah, fair enough. Ryo is so valuable, but so fragile, both in terms of its own durability and in terms of how it progresses in the game. So we'll see what Osmium can do to enable and protect that hero in particular. As we did have a pause there as Sebas had disconnected, but he's back in. He says he's ready to go, and we don't have the all clear from the Hokori side just yet. Never mind, there it is, and we'll get this game underway. So ready to get things started. Immediate five-man smoke out from both sides. We'll see if this is aggressive in any way or if they're just looking for that sort of early extra move speed.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about these SA squads, we'll see if there's a battle on the mid lane ward, as there usually tends to be, but that's where, at the very least, we're not going to see any extremely tricky plays, no shift Q movements onto passing the ward on another smoked hero, just very simply going to be Gardic placing his ward on the other side. This is a ward, though, that does give vision to the other side, so if you do see an Osmium hero make their way into that little divot, they will know about the ward, at least that's on the right side of the map, but that's where maybe it's a little bit too deep for the sentry to clip it. It really is just a matter if anybody scouts it out, but that's where Gardic, gonna get stunned up by Kataro, needs the body blocks, and okay, keep it going. Keep it going.
Decrepping himself's a little bit awkward there, but he's trying. Did a little bit of dancing there. Tower shots come in, so the tower does take damage. The problem is he's got an IO with him, so damage is not going to stick. First blood goes their way. It was actually Sladen who got it, so honestly, this might actually help out a little bit more for Osmium. Your IO is going to be able to make that little bit of faster progress towards those items, and Kataro's going to find farm in the... Didn't necessarily need the first blood bonus there, so well done by Osmium. They strike first here and get their laning stage off to the slightest of advantages here.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a nice way to start it out. Not to mention gets over on Sladen, so even more regen for the Beastmaster, which will make Draken a very happy BM rushing out that Helm of Iron Will. But yep, They got into that divot.
Hey,
They check it. There you go. Easy
nicely
stuff.
done. Oh, little bit of extra gold there. A bad start at all. But, oh, let's take a look up at the top lane first here. This is going to be an interesting one from the Osmium side. Katyu and Kataro, they do have a nice little bit that they can do with the sort of double stuns. They've got the slow and the reality rift, but in this lane, it really feels like the only hero you're going to be able to go on is El Misho. Vitaly is a Tide Hunter, so we assume he'll get some points up in the Kraken Shell at some point, and that's going to kind of make it too hard to gank him. Over on the other side, however, well, they could make a play here as well, right? El Misho has the tag team skilled up at level 1. Vitaly could get a point into the Gush, and they could try some sort of counter maneuver here. So both sides with the ability to try and make some plays. It's just a matter of, do they really feel like they have actual opportunities that'll come their way?
Yeah, and, you know, at the very least, it's just going to be them last inning. Everybody wants their Helm of Iron Will. Everybody's going to be waiting. It's not the worst situation here. Decrep's so annoying, though, man. What an obnoxious spell. And they can't fight for range creeps either. They don't have any nuke. They don't have anything to kind of put out. It's just going to be kind of the 5 Pugna being a little bit more effective in this scant situation.
At you. Taking a little bit of damage up top, but yeah, this is kind of what I meant before. Both sides have the ability in this top lane to just kind of chain some stuff together, but they have to show enough respect to the opposing side's lockdown to maybe not go all in for this. So a lot of damage being traded off, but I'm sure anything's going to come of that. Meanwhile, said down in the bottom lane, Gardic is just going to be the most obnoxious Pugna he can possibly be. Try and take some last hits away from Draken if at all possible, and that really is the only play that they have here, because Nether Blast is not going to actually do consistent enough damage with Slayton just healing.
Yeah, it is one of those lanes, though, where it's impossible to lose. And again, unfortunately, you're not going to see that Roar come out all too fast. You're not going to see the super high-level Beastmaster coming out here, as actually top Vitaly taken out. The shards from El Misho seemed a little bit off the mark as well, but as we usually see with the carry CK, just every single Chaos Bolt, it just does so much damage. It's just such a powerful nuke, or it can be a powerful nuke if you get lucky, you know? It's that min-max damage type deal, but when it hits, it hurts, and I think that's Vitaly's 3rd or 4th that he ended up nabbing.
And Vitaly kind of took a little bit of a gamble there, trying to get aggressive himself with the point in the Gush. Meant he didn't have the Kraken Shell to reduce that damage, and now El Misho get taken down as well. Katyu is in there with the stun, only level 1, but it does the job, and well, 3 straight kills to start us off here for Osmium, and at the end of the day, if you're Vitaly, you're still just going to sit here and find whatever you can, whatever you really want in terms of experience and some last hits, but it is a concern. If that CK sort of gets off to a strong start, we've seen what happens when he's able to play from an advantage, as Katyu is completely sort of stuck in this fight. He's going to pop the stick, though, and that might be enough. Look at the body blocks from Kataro. Okay. CK saves the day. Katyu falls back, heals up, and Hokori, I mean, they really wanted that kill. They were so close to it as well. Now El Misho, gotta be a little bit careful here. Reality Rift pulls him back. There wasn't enough mana for the immediate Chaos Bolt, but Kataro may be trying to bait him because he's sitting on a wand.
Yeah, it's a 5-stick charge. You definitely have enough mana. They're really trying to make this timing work for them because, well, Misho doesn't have Snowball. He can't dodge out that Chaos Bolt. If they do see the shards committed, he's kind of stuck in an awkward position in terms of his skill build. But that's where rotating out for the Water Runes, gets chased by the Ogre. Might steal the bounty, might not. Because I kind of do think he needs to be with Vitaly in lane. Vitaly is not really the tankiest boy, even though he's got the ring protection, he has the ring of health. When it comes to getting bursted down, he's certainly still very killable.
Yeah, he still hasn't put a point up in the shell, so have that sort of just damage block to rely on. And well, Joe has not returned just yet. He did drop down a ward. He got the bounty rune stolen, but problem is, yeah, that ward he threw down was directly underneath, not Hokori, excuse me, Osmium Vision. So they know all about it. They'll probably deward it at some point. Right now, though, they are looking for the play onto Vitaly. Not an easy play, especially since that Kraken Shell actually comes through at the perfect time, just as the Chaos Bolt connected. So Vitaly's not really stunned up in the slightest. El Misho has now returned, and Taro's got to back himself away, but look at Analog. TP's in, gets the swashbuckle, had the range, finds the kill, and now they're going to body block on the Ogre, and Cat, you should not be getting away from this. Double kill for Analog. Very nicely timed rotation.
Yeah. And honestly, gets a double kill, gets to rotate back mid. He was, until that point, getting pushed back to the base by Sebas, and that's a perfect rotation from him. Not to mention, Sebas without any support on this cart. It's not like he's actually able to nuke in the wave all too aggressively. Unfortunately, with the Quaswex Invoker, can't really afford to just casually nuke out the wave with the Tornado. You do want to be clipping any hero, really. But that just means Analog can actually push out the lanes here. And if Analog can get ahead of the waves, well, Analog doesn't have to show on the map. He can make a play with his Rolling Thunder, while Sebas really can only take these creeps underneath this tower. It's where you do wonder when he's going to make his move, but it's not anytime soon. There's smoke on the Pango. He's going towards bottom.
Solo smoke because he doesn't have a TP, so it's going to take a little while to get there, but he's got a DD rune bottled up, and all Yuma and Gardic have to do is just go about their business, act natural, don't do anything too suspicious, and Analog will arrive in time. Now they make their move. Stun in onto Draken. They're going to ignore Sladen entirely and just go for the core kill, and they should have it.
Easy. Very nice kill as well. And again, it comes back to the Isle being attached to the Beastmaster. Maybe if he has Roar, he's able to walk away. Maybe if he's a little bit more farmed, he'd have that knowledge. But even just not having the Hawks out, really not having too much to play with, it's super easy for Analog. No time wasted as well, as I think Sebas was able to push in the creep wave a little bit, get some mid-tower damage done. But that's where Amisha just picks up the slack, and you'll love a super high-level Tusk.
That would be a nice benefit here for Hokori, just so that they have someone who can maybe start making some plays to push that momentum a little bit further. Because as well as Analog is playing, you would love for him to not be the only guy capable of setting you up. So Tusk is going to grab some experience. Meanwhile, Gardic will be doing Pugna things, getting some extra damage onto that tier 1. It's still only a level 1 Nether Blast, so they're not going to melt through it very quickly, but it's damage for free. There was nothing that Sladen and Draken were going to be able to do there to just immediately punish that. So playing things well here, as Analog will be returning to the middle lane, so El Misho may get the boot now, but he was able to pick up level and a half, let's say. So a bad play, or actually, okay, El Misho's going to get his lane back because Analog is TPing top. That's Kataro all by himself, and I mean, there's just no way. He can't get out of this. He's not even going to get off a Chaos Bolt initially. He will finally throw one down, but it won't matter. Analog just rolls back in and finds the kill. Sebas was able to find some sort of play on the Gardic there in the jungle, so they don't come away completely empty-handed on Osmium, but that's just not a great trade-off overall, especially considering it's Analog who gets another kill. He's sitting at 4-0 already on this Pango.
Yeah, I'm really surprised Osmium maybe just stopped paying attention on that mid lane for a second there, because there was a creep wave on top of the Pango when that TP is actually made, and, well, they give away really a lot there. Kataro does not want to go down in that kind of fashion. They really want to do the lane swap, I think, before that happens, but at least he's able to get onto the mid tower very quickly here, and with the Rolling Thunder gone, with Yuma really in no shape to fight this at all, this is a nice little play from Osmium here. The only issue is if Kataro does go down again, if he does eat really any more deaths, that's where you start to step on the toes of your Beastmaster. Not everybody can be farmed here, and that's also where Vitaly, he is the man to shut down this push. He's still very obnoxious, but no mana.
Tornado into EMP. The Ravage, though, comes out, so they do get the stun down onto 3 or 4, and they're going to start turning. Kataro has to fall back. Sladen's trying to heal him up. Ooh. There's the Snowball, keeping him locked in place. They get the shards now as well. Kataro's still not out of danger. They're going to be able to take him down as Yuma gets the kill, and Osmium just a little overconfident there. It's a very nice Tornado EMP from Sebas, but I don't think they realized that this Soul Ring was ready. So even though the burn comes through, the Tide can still drop the Ravage, and they just get completely blindsided by that ult.
Yeah, and you lose your CK again. He's starting to really fall behind here. He's not really able to make too many plays. Draken, though, I think he is here to finally clean something up here, and he should be the one to get the tower. Unfortunate that he felt like he needed to use the Roar there, but this tier 1 is relatively free now. It's just sad that Draken wasn't able to make his way maybe a little bit earlier there. But this does carve out a path for Kataro to now take over the bot lane. He will still be splitting it, I think, a little bit with Draken here, but the further Draken can play up the lane, the more that Kataro can bounce between these two camps and the triangle.
Gotta try and make some space for him, because he's suffered a couple of setbacks with those early deaths. Of course, even with those deaths being taken into account, he's still pretty high up there net worth-wise, so not nearly as bad as it could be for the CK. The deaths are rough, but should be able to recover nicely. However, Hokori, they're still looking to go on the offensive here. They've caught out Draken. Sladen does not have reload just yet, so, well, now is a time where you wish maybe you could have gone without using that roar in the middle lane, because he doesn't have it to defend himself. And Sladen has no TP here, actually, so they're just going to keep on chasing onto him. He tethered over to the Dom-helmed creep, but it's not enough separation, and Analog's able to pick up 2 more kills.
Yeah, and, well, because they have to take Kataro out of the top lane, he goes mid, you have to take him out of the mid lane, goes bottom, because he's taking the bottom safe farm. Really, Draken only dies because of how far up he needs to play. I love to see Osmium maybe get a little bit more balance in their lanes now, but that's where Osmium are also okay with taking this game low and slow. Sebas has already made moves over towards that Midas, I think only a few creeps away, and then he's going to have that. At the same time, Draken not really wasting his time either. He's looking for the Helm of the Overlord. They really are looking for, I want to say, that timing that comes after the fact. It's where you want 2 or 3 items before you really make your move here, which does put a lot less pressure on Hokori, whereas Yuma, he's got his armlet. He's much farmed than Kostabila was in our first game of the day.
It's always going to be a bit of a benefit for him. You see, Yuma is actually going to grab himself up a soul ring here as well, so
Makes sense.
yeah, you're going up against that sort of EMP. You always just want that sort of emergency play. Of course, a little bit different to the Tide, because your reincarnation actually costs more than what the soul ring gives you. So Yuma will still have to do some math on the fly, but the soul ring will certainly be more helpful than just hoping you don't get hit by an EMP at all.
Yeah, and, well, Roar's back up. Draken would love to find Aurora into a relocate play. The only problem is when it comes to his targets, Corey really aren't splitting up. The only hero playing by himself, more or less, has been the Wraith King, but the Wraith King pretty much always has at least 2 or 3 heroes out in front of him on the map. And without them finding a play, it's getting to that point where Osmium are starting to step on each other's toes. Guitaro's only level 9. You're not seeing him get that alone time that you really do want from that CK. It's, again, the issue with the IO, where he needs to be that vehicle for Kataro to get onto the map, but until Draken or Sebas find an opening, there's really no play to be made. It's where we are going to see this game really heavily slow down.
Yeah, and that's going to be the downside. Guitaro has moved his way to the top of the net worth chart, so that is obviously a positive for them, but are the items going to be enough to offset maybe his lack of levels at this stage? That is a question that Osmium would rather not have to ask, but may come down to it. This is going to be a big one if they can find it. They get the relocate coming in as well, but there's a defensive snowball. Going to try and reset the fight. Analog will get away with the swashbuckle. He still has that rolling thunder to throw out here, and he is going to go for it. No, he's not. Kataro's able to pull him in, stuns him up, and Analog can't get it off in time. Big kill for Osmium. And they might have a shot onto Vitali. This is not an easy kill, but the roar is available. Do they feel like they have enough damage with the heroes that they have available, though? With Kataro not here, yeah, they feel like that would not really go. Okay, so I like the discipline from Draken. He had the opportunity, but can't secure the kill. You don't want to put that ability on cooldown.
Yeah, and honestly, that smoke strikes at the perfect time. It's post-Midas on Sebas. I think that's really the only thing they were waiting for on the Osmium side. And not only do you take away the mid laner, but you strike before that Tidehunter has his Blink Dagger, where Vitaly is turning around his build to make sure he gets it in time. It's where now Hokori are the ones that have to wait a little bit here, aside from a crazy room that Analog's able to pick up. With Analog going for the Maelstrom build-up, we don't see those aggressive items come out. It's no Blink Rush, it's no Diffusal. It does mean that at the end of the day, Hokori need their Tidehunter to really get this game started yet again. It's also where, unfortunately, losing their mid tower so early, they don't really get that structure. But Analog, he's burned.
And he's dead. Oh, maybe not. Hold on. He's able to get away. Does the burn? Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, Sebas will get it with the urn there, so I thought maybe Katyu would steal it, but urn beats burn, it turns out. So Analog gets taken down. Only his second death of the game, but that's kind of part of the problem. That was a very valuable kill for Osmium to pick up, and it only exacerbates the issues with the itemization here, as Yuma is going to get jumped in on now as well. Does have the reincarnation, but this is not where you want to... Okay, he doesn't have the reincarnation because he gets all of his mana burned away.
Yep, he popped his tick charges. That was him trying to be well timed there, but you can already see on his hotbar is what, 35 mana short, 25 mana short. It's unfortunate. Maybe if he popped the arcane ring, you know, really smashed his face on the keyboard, he could have gotten everything off, but it's still not a very fortunate death. And they were set up to actually make the punish there. You see the three heroes smoked on the back end. Everybody aside from Analog, who was respawning, could have been at that secondary engagement, but now how do they turn the smoke into anything? I don't really think they will. Aside from that word placed, it kind of feels like Hokori are maybe playing a little bit slower than Osmium. Osmium's found a few little, albeit small openings, but openings they are.
Right. Most of it, they found some kills. They've got their cores farming, and to the point you were making, if there's really anything left for Hokori to do, I don't think they would even want to if they had the chance, because Vitali, I mean, you're getting pretty damn close to that Blink Dagger. 221 gold away from it, so don't take a chance. Don't jump in there. Don't throw your Ravage out in a situation where you might just lose him and lose that progress, because he's one or two camps away from getting that Blink. That could be the potential game changer instead, so should just see them back themselves away here as we get everybody reconnected and the game will be resumed. And yeah, Vitali, not take any chances right now. Just get that Blink. Your team really needs to rely on you at this stage, so play it safe and see where Vitali goes from there.
Yeah, and, well, get to push into this top side, see what happens now if the Blink Dagger is flying out. Hopefully doesn't get scouted out by this Osmium ward, and, well, there you go. Good guy, Gardic. Got the nice sentry placement on the ground. Really cool ward from Osmium, to be honest. That's a very subtle ward there that doesn't even block the camp. But into the Roche pit. This is an interesting in-between move here. And with the Vlads, this is actually going to happen. And I think Hokori are caught none the wiser. This is such an early timing. It's still nighttime. They have the ward there. I think because they have this ward, though, they might miss it. They just walk down the ramp very casually. And I think in doing so, they very deceptively think that this isn't going down, but it is, and that's free.
Not something that you would expect, especially considering the CK in particular, you know, had sort of lost a step there with the Chaos Strike nerfs against Roche, but they have the damage, they have Sladen to help out, they have the Beastmaster to just continuously sort of get in there as well, and a little bit of sneakiness goes their way. They'll take the tier 1 tower top as Draken grabs that objective, and map control is starting to become an issue here for Hokori. Lost all of their tier 1 towers 16, 17 minutes in, and well, if they do try to go for a sort of split push plays, you're fighting into an IO lineup that could potentially set up for a relocate directly onto you. So things are going to get a little bit tense for Hokori in terms of easily finding farm for themselves. And that's not even really taking into account the fact that Osmium could keep pushing. Lanes are kind of going their way here, and tier 2 towers could be next up on their targeting list as Vitali is surrounded. Doesn't really know it just yet, but there's going to be the tornado into the EMP, burns away the mana. Vitali will try to fall back, and they do have Analog TPing in, so they could try and force this fight, but Vitali just kind of losing too much here. Trying to get into the tree line at least while Analog creates a distraction, but Kitaro, gotta be very careful. He does have the Aegis, but you wouldn't want to use it in that scenario. But while all that happened, Sebas was able to take down the tower, so the objective does still go their way, and now they're going to go in for a second attempt at these kills. El Misho will be the target. Snowball buys him some time, but don't know if he's getting out of this one. Walrus Punch can't really create the separation. Kitaro gets the kill, and Osmium are really just shoving their faces right into Hokori, and it's working out for him so far.
Yeah, no, it's a little bit awkward there, and they do actually get the mana into Vitali if that secondary fight would have gone down, but unfortunately, they don't feel the confidence. They don't feel like they can get their carry in it, and without the Rolling Thunder, I kind of agree. The call to retreat is pretty appropriate there, and it is a little bit annoying for Qatar to actually be in these fights, but I think that's where that Aegis kind of kills any aggression that would have been directed at him. And once he loses his illusions, he does lose quite a lot of damage, but that's where, unfortunately, until Vitali is ready to pull that trigger, there's no follow-up. There's no kills that are really going to go Hokori's way. That's also where Yuma is still able to find farm here, but unfortunately Gardic, again, trying to get that D-ward down. He's taking so much damage, might just die to the burn, but they need to fight here, and will their opponents let them walk away? I don't know.
Gardic gets taken down first. Vitali's pulled back in by the Reality Rift, and he doesn't want to use the Ravage here because there's no one to follow it up, so he's just going to have to eat the death, and well, that's Osmium with another fight, and that's Osmium onto another tower. The Phantasm's going to come out now as well. The Overcharge is here from Sladen. The Bloodlust is coming in from Catyu, so Kotaro is a sort of one-man battering ram. This tower is going to go down.
Yeah, it's not your Medusa, it's not your Luna that perhaps we're used to seeing all those buffs slathered on, but it certainly makes the job a little bit easier here, and that's also where a lot of map control going their way. At the very least for Hokori, Yuma has made a breakaway, he's finished up an entire Deso, he's at quite a big power spike for his own hero, but unless they find, really, Sebas alone by himself, he's got a BKB. He should be able to react to that Blink Ravage. It's where a smoke coming in from Hokori needs to be perfect. They need to find what feels like a Burrow Strike. Vitaly needs to get right on top of the Invoker. Otherwise, the team fight could get botched real quick. It's where they are very split up on Team Osmium right now, though. They could certainly get picked off, but that's where they want to find really the IO duo first. They don't want to get caught in a fight where they can just bring another person in. But look at the smoke. I don't think it's really going to connect here. They have to look on the mid lane. And I think Sebas is very aware that his opponents are not showing right now, so he'll go the long way. And they do not want that Aegis carrier.
It's really all they're going to be able to find, though, at this rate. No one else from Osmium is showing. So they're just going to decide against really going in at all. Which, to be honest, is probably the smarter move. It's very disappointing if you're Hokori, because you were hoping to make some sort of counterplay there, but if you jump in onto Kotaro, first of all, he's got DD runes, so you might just lose heroes before you even get through that first life. If you do get through the first life, you have to deal with him again, and he'll have all of his teammates behind him. So it is unfortunate for Hokori. They don't get the chance to sort of attack, but if they lose that fight there, then that's basically a high ground push, so really can't afford it. At least now that Aegis will be timing out before the next engagement.
Yeah, and, well, stuck on the high ground. The Aegis is going to get reclaimed. And then I feel like we need to see Hokori again, the aggressive a little bit. They are getting farm on these cores. They can only really get farm on one core, though. Either Yuma makes a breakaway for the lanes, or it's Analog who's successfully able to do it. Almisho, though, that is such a fast grab by Kotaro there. Incredibly well done. No time to react with the snowball. And in showing their hand there, they're going to get these two lanes out. Someone's going to be able to break away towards top, but I feel like Osmium can just walk up the high ground here, and if Hokori are not respecting their opponents, nobody's set up to clear the wave. There's no creep clear right now, and Analog is coming back now, but with 40 seconds on Glyph, this is free damage. Look at how many range creeps, how many Forge Spirits, the cart. Finally, Vitaly comes, but, oh, your tower only has 500 HP left.
And on top of all the buffs that we were talking about for the CK the last time around, I wasn't even taken into account. Now, Sebas has a very sort of powerful alacrity that he can throw out onto his teammate as well. So CK just smashes through anything and everything, and like you said, that tier 3 tower is down to 500 HP, and Osmium lost nothing, really.
Yeah, I think the big concern for Hokori right now, though, is they're not finding a good opportunity to use that Ravage, and with how fast the stakes of this game have really gotten ramped up here, well, they can't afford to use the Ravage. If they lose any fight on the Radiant side of the map, it's most likely just got to be a pathway onto that bottom Rax, and then you're down the bad Rax to lose as well, because any time you're forced to go to that bottom side of the map, it's so ugly, because that just pulls you away from the Roche. But yeah,
Sebas
Yuma
found him.
Oh no, no
Relocate
BKB.
is coming
There's nothing
in.
he can do.
Mana gets burned away. Soul Ring is not really going to help, even if he popped it, which he won't. And that's a little backbreaking now, because Hokori can't really make any moves now without Yuma. They just don't have the damage for it. So, oh, hold up. Had you?
Yeah.
Old TP.
Oh, no.
Ooh, Vitaly, he blinks away, but he blinks directly into Kotaro. Okay. Nice Kraken Shell there to buy some time, but the Tornado will still hit, and they are still directly on top of this Tidehunter, and Vitaly's going to get taken down. This is... Man, this is brutal. I mean, in the draft, we were sort of talking about how, on paper, Hokori could have the means to stay on the offensive even when the Ravage is down. At this point,
Oh
Hokori...
no, Gardic.
Oops. Hokori are just looking for a chance to use the Ravage at all. As Gardic just tries to hide in the trees, he will be taken down, and Creepway's not really cooperating with them initially, but there we go. They remove the backdoor protection. That's going to force out the Glyph, and Hokori don't really have any defense right now. Yuma's here, but the other two heroes are out and about.
Yeah, and well, they need to get the mid-wave out now. Backdoor is going to come back in just a little bit here, but not nearly fast enough to defend that range Drax. Yeah, game is hard, and I really think Vitali gets caught out on his own side of the map there. One of the ugly aspects of that IO is, well, when you come back from the relocate, you are so hard to pin down. It's very difficult to determine where the person relocated from. You don't get to see the return effect, and in doing so, it's very simply Vitali trying to fill the map where somebody died top. I'm going to go bottom, and I'm going to do my thing. I'm a Tide Hunter, but because the relocate is in the Radiant Triangle, he gets caught out. They die on their side of the map. They lose their racks. Those were the stakes before. Now we're probably going to see the objective focus back on that Roshan, but it's not a very long Rosh either. And a Rosh where you give the Ag Shard over to the CK. Qatar continues to accelerate. He's got an AC now. Katara's
Oh, man.
pretending to be an illusion, you know, all that good stuff. And it works.
Well, that's just kind of the stage of the game that we're at. Yeah, Katara can just get away with whatever he wants as Garda gets taken down, and yeah, the final bits of that AC are now flying out to him, so Katara is even stronger. Roshan's up in a minute. The entirety of Hokori are basically shoved back into their base, and they're trying to hunt down some of these Beastmaster creeps, but they can't go too far because Osmium are just waiting for him on the high ground, so they really are pinned back right now. This is sort of settling down into a siege sort of scenario, and Osmium have every advantage going their way.
Yeah, and well, 35 seconds on Roche. They don't know how fast this is going to be, but they're going to be very pleased once they see it. We're really just not seeing that picture perfect scenario play out for Hokori. We need to see Vitali getting on these heroes. Unfortunately, what's going to happen now is Osmium are going to be able to initiate. They're going to be able to get that jump, and then I feel as if Vitali is no longer able to burst. They need to save the Ravage for after BKBs and hope that Osmium don't back off before those timings come to them, because without that, I really don't know how they keep a team fight going for them. They need to somehow get their opponents before they escape. They need to find the supports. They would love to find and kill off the Invoker, but Sebas has not really been pushed towards those edges of the map. He really has just been able to play a very relaxed game of Invoker. Not the craziest of games. He hasn't been making plays galore, but it just is very simple to just walk around Alacrity, Kataro, have the game kind of happen for yourself. He's getting about 70 damage and 82 attack speed every time that Alacrity does land. Super free Roche and smoke up from Hokori, but again, it's a very fast Roche timer, so this comes a little bit too fast, and I feel like we're just gonna see all these heroes run away. They might take Cat-U, but they need to take him and then run. It's not time to stay around.
And they're going to try to get themselves out. Draken, he blinked his way forward.
Oh,
That buys
no.
Kataro time. They're directly in onto Analog. Vitali, though, does still pull the trigger on the Ravage. That should allow them to get the kill onto the Beastmaster, but they're going to need a lot more than that, and at this point, it's not really about winning this fight anymore. They just need to run. They need to try and get as far away from this as they can, but Yuma is going to get run down. There's the first life going away as the reincarnation will bring him back up, but right back into the middle of those enemy heroes, and they will clean him up. So, well, they find the Beastmaster. The Ogre had to pop the buyback there, but he's right back on the front line with the Bloodlust, and a double life. Kataro is going to start pushing in for the second lane of X.
Yeah, and well, what do you do? I think Analog got really unlucky there, to be honest, just kind of walking into Kataro. Don't want to see that. It's a Pango with a lot of life to give in these team fights, especially with the Ags, but it's just not in the cards here. Vitali gets pulled back. Really nice purge. His Kraken shells are something else. Those are pretty sick looking, but at the same time, no glyph onto the last tower here. Depending on how this roll really affects the Osmium side here, could just see the Megas come out here, but here we go.
Go, blinks onto the back line. Tusk blinks forward as well. They're trying to give this a go, and there is some nice damage coming out initially. Maybe they can get the IO. Yeah, Sladen will fall, but Elmisho has to die as well, and this is not going fantastically now. The Roar will be deployed. Analog's in some trouble, tries to get back into his own base, but he doesn't have any spells anymore, so they'll simply clean him up. Yuma dropping as well, and that really should be the end of it. Gardic is going to try to get back to the fountain, and maybe he makes it, but they don't really have a fight anymore as the Tidehunter's now the one in trouble. Vitali trying to just stand in the corner, but he's not dead yet. Elmisho buys back, gets back in. Yuma will do the same. They're just really looking to force this, and they found a kill on the Cat-U, but they still haven't dealt with Kataro. The Chaos Knight goes right back in. He'll find the second kill onto the Tusk. And while that happened, yeah, they will finally get in onto that last lane of Rax. They've got the Megas, and that will be it. The GG is called. Hokori will call it quits here in Game 1, and Osmium, well, very nicely done in this first game. They come out just sort of firing on all cylinders, and they catch Hokori by surprise.
Yeah, and I really do feel like for a while there, Hikori were fine with how things were going, especially in the early game. Analog was making pretty seamless rotations, giving up a lot of XP, a lot of farm to the other heroes. But then that collapse on the mid tower just comes a little bit too quickly. I think really when Vitaly is forced to use his Ravage that way, he wants to hold it. He needs to hold it to make sure that tower doesn't get taken. So even though they get the kill onto Kataro, and we're praising and saying, oh, Kataro's dying a few too many times, he's struggling when Draken comes in for the cleanup, that's where the game kind of stopped for Hikori. After that point, we never saw them really get aggressive. We see Analog die two more times, getting picked up by Sebas and that duo in Sladen and Kataro. And then we wait for the Vitali Blank Dagger, and then we keep waiting and waiting and waiting. And then the Aegis comes out, they sneak Roche. And really, after that Roche gets snuck, what do you do? You can't go onto Kataro. You can't really find your way onto these other heroes. The BKBs come out, and I think that's where Hikori crafted a lineup here where they were just a little bit too bound to their spells. The BKB timings from Osmium just kind of broke any play that they could have made. Then Yuma's farming against a CK. They picked the Wraith King into the CK, but I just don't think that matchup is as good as a lot of these teams are thinking it is. Honestly, Osmium just kind of very easily get to walk into a victory here. It didn't really feel like there were too many mistakes forced out of them. They just got kind of a nice little easy win.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the most important part here. Hokori were unable to force any significant sort of errors from Osmium, so this is what happens when they're just allowed to play their game. We see an Invoker matchup where, as you were alluding to in the game itself, there wasn't any pressure. There was no comeback needed. There was no sort of hit or miss like we've seen a lot of Invoker players fall prey to. Sebas just got to do whatever he wanted the whole way through. He was there to just support Kataro with that alacrity and the lockdown when needed. And on the other side, Hokori just more and more felt like they needed two or three things to go right simultaneously to even have an initiation, let alone an actual win.
Yeah, it's not like they were dying. The game was frozen at 8-9 for super long time, and you're like, oh, okay, this is fine. It's like a 5K gold lead, but then I just don't get a play in between. And it's those in between plays that make your game so much easier. Imagine if Vitali had an Ags in this game. I feel like we could have seen a much different game of Dota play out, but it's where Osmium a little too quick, a little too smart. We'll see if they make a change in game two.
Game two going to be coming up in just a couple of minutes here, so let's step aside. When we come back, we'll see if Osmium get that 2-0 or if Hokori are going to be able to salvage that 1-1. So stick around. Game two's coming your way in just a little bit.